Okay, it is Tuesday, June 3rd, 2025 at 5:30 PM. This is the Economic Development Committee for the City of Wausau. With a quorum present, I will call this meeting to order. First on the agenda is public comments. Do we have any public comments today? No public comments? Okay, then we will move on to item number 2, which is the minutes, but we are pulling the minutes for this meeting. We will review them next meeting because the full minutes are not available. So then moving on to agenda item number 3, discussion on Metro Housing Report from North Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission update.
Yes, you'll remember back, I believe it was about January, we had a conversation just about different educational opportunities and different presentations. Having a shorter meeting this month, we wanted to provide some information on housing and just get some updates. We have Sam Wausau from North Central Regional Planning here today. He's been working, I've probably heard you speak 3, 4, 5 times now in the last 6 months about updates to the housing study. So we'll turn it over to Sam, and then we'll have staff fill in some additional gaps and talking about some of the different projects that are going on, just talking about current housing stock and where we're at with different projects. So Sam, take it away.
Thank you, Randy. So some of you might remember I led that initial study in 2022, and this is sort of just a check-in to see, okay, we projected this much demand back then. How do we stand today? So can go to the next slide. So real quick, I want to go through the state came out with new population projections. They're the official ones that we have to reference in a lot of our plans, but there's some quirks to them. So basically, they're much lower than the ones that they did in 2013 based on the 2010 census. And it really just reflects, who's at what age group now and, the replacement of births versus deaths. It doesn't really reflect huge mass migration in or out of the state because those things are harder to predict. It's just based on existing age cohorts. The issues that we're seeing or the questions that come up with these new projections are that, well, they're lower, but they're based off the 2020 census. A lot of data shows that from 2020 to present, a lot more people have moved into Wisconsin than expected. So we have kind of seen a shift back towards people moving here just because it's a great place. So unfortunately, they did not provide updated household projections, and that's how we got our housing unit projections in the last plan. So they don't have those yet, and they don't know when they're going to be available yet. So we're just sticking with the old ones for now with some disclaimers that I'll go through. And then we'll quick go through the new unit progress. So next slide. Here's the projections. This is our 10-county region. You can see Marathon is in the best shape of all of them with a 5.5% projected decline through 2050. That's mainly because we just have a younger population. There's more people having families here, whereas some of the northern counties and even ones farther south in here have a more senior heavy population because they're more destination places to retire or just places that people have always lived their whole life. So that's just a quick snapshot of what the state says is going to happen. It doesn't always happen that way, but they're there for reference. Next slide. Here's a quick graphic. Sometimes when you have a flat population, people think, well, we don't need more housing, but household size has decreased pretty consistently, and that's not just a Wausau thing. That's everywhere in the country. That's a lot of other countries besides ours. But here's a visual that shows you that smaller household sizes result in the need for more units because there's fewer people in each household. Next slide. All right, so these are those initial projections we had from 2022. In summary, we projected 2,077 units needed by 2025 and another 1,153 by 2030 for the 8 municipalities that participated in the study. And then there's additional demand through 2040, but it's much less. We're not going to focus so much on that today since that may change with those updated projections if we ever get them from the state. But let's go to the next slide. I think I have. Here's a summary. I counted about 1,190. I think I'm 2 off, and I'll explain that in the next slide. This does not include the Vanguard or the Green Tree developments that are in the works. So it is higher than that. But if you include those 2 that I just mentioned, you have about 75, almost 75% of the units that were projected have been built. And that's for 2025. But that demand continues through 2030. Those 181 lots, those are just things that were platted before the housing study was conducted, but they weren't full. They're still filling up slowly, so it's just a few subdivisions, and none of those are in Wausau. Those are in different municipalities. And then Stettin is not in the study. They're just outside the study that we did, but they have a 25-unit subdivision going in right now, and that's pretty close to us, so I figured it was worth mentioning. And then one-off projects, let's say somebody like splits their property in half, and then their child builds another house on that spot. I didn't get too much in the weeds with that because it can be kind of difficult to track, but there is a building permit database that the state has, and then if you talk to Bill Hebert, I'm sure you can get more detailed numbers on that if you want them. So then the next slide, I think, is the master list of all the stuff I came up with, looking through different agendas, different news articles. 2 corrections. This is a bit dated. West Side Battery, that's now called West Side Commons, and it's actually 56 units rather than 54. And I overshot T-Wall by 1 unit. I think that's 153. So take that total and subtract 1 with those 2 corrections. But the rest of them are there. Landmark, I wrote renovated because it wasn't adding new units, but that's a pretty significant project because they're, revitalizing existing housing stock is often more cost-effective than always building new, so it's sort of a two-fold approach. It's good to encourage both new construction and preservation of what we already have built. Next slide. So that 2/3 is before you added those last 2 developments I mentioned, so it's more like 3/4. You look at the new population projections and you might think, okay, well, if they're going to be lower, maybe we do have enough units. I looked at census data today. The most recent data set is from 2023 because census is always 2 years behind. The vacancy rate for homeowners for both the city and the county was 0.0%, according to the census. And in a healthy housing market, you have closer to 5% or so. Rental vacancy rate was 5.6 for City of Wausau and 3.6 for Marathon County. So the rental vacancy rate is approaching a healthier range for the city, but the countywide demand is still high, so you might absorb people who can't find housing in some of the surrounding communities. So, again, census is always a little bit behind reality, but it was interesting to see those really low vacancy rates for owner-occupied housing because there might be an opportunity there to explore some more of that, which I know is a challenge when land is limited, and that's, again, not specific to Wausau. Even places that you think would have plenty of developable land, there's high bedrock, there's wetlands, there's other stuff, so that's why it doesn't always happen so quickly as we would like it to. So even though those state population projections are a little less optimistic, I'm optimistic that we'll probably exceed them because of the trends we have seen in the last 5 years. Marquette University did a study saying that they kind of called out the different communities that are in a good position to sustain growth, and Marathon County was one of them. And we expect continued demand despite those population projections just because of the smaller household sizes. You're going to have some aging housing units that just financially the numbers won't work to keep them going, so something will have to replace them. And prices have leveled off. It's not as crazy as it was, 2020 through 2023 when prices really shot up. They have leveled off, but they're still high. They haven't come down. So, and finally, Wisconsin's a great place to live. A lot of people want to move here to work. Other places in this country are, experiencing more natural hazards than we are and becoming less affordable than we are. So maybe the secret's out and people are catching on. So I think that's all I have. Do you want to go to the next one to make sure? Okay, yeah. My contact information if you have any questions.
Any questions from the committee members? Alder Hanke.
Yeah, just some comments. I like that you mentioned climate issues and natural disasters because I know firsthand I have a brother-in-law that moved from down south back home, so mainly due to the weather. So that's real and it is happening, and I expect more and more of that in the near future here. And I always like to support building housing. I think that's one way to show the outside states and areas that we're investing in the area and building new or renovating, and it just makes us more attractive for people to move here. And if people aren't moving here, we're going to die off, and I'd prefer if that didn't happen. So that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Hinkie, for bringing up climate migration, because that's one thing that I was thinking about too when I was reading this over ahead of time, and just wondering if you have heard any kind of,
I've read a bunch of
projections.
articles. Yeah. And it seems like everyone's just kind of sitting and waiting to see, because it's like, well, okay, are people going to really move from Florida to Wisconsin? They might move from Florida to Arkansas or, something like that, because then the hurricane part goes mostly away. But there's just so many factors at play that it's really difficult to put it into numbers, and that's what we're struggling with. It's something I'm keeping an eye on. Anecdotally, though, I do know people who it's like they were sick of wildfires out west, so they moved back home, or they had kids and they're now the age where it makes more sense to be, somewhere that's easier to live in. Whereas, some people, like when you're in your 20s, you might move somewhere that's more fun, but, maybe more expensive or more full of traffic or whatever it is. So, and job growth has been strong in Wisconsin, which also kind of indicates that more inbound migration is happening or will happen. So, yeah, there's a lot out there. It's just really difficult to put into numbers, but a lot of the data does show that we'll be less affected than a lot of states just because we are so far north. It's like we'll have a more mild climate potentially, but it's not like we're going to have 120-degree summers anytime soon. So,
and we have fresh water too.
we have what?
Fresh water.
Yes, that's a big one.
Close by, but
Yep.
yeah. Thank you. Any other questions or comments from committee members? No? Oh, Alder Gisselman.
Thank you. You didn't speak too much to the projections for Wausau. That, I think, sort of correlates with the projections for Marathon. A strong decline, really, projections into 2050. How can we justify or move towards a housing plan if we sense that the population is gradually going to be declining? And I think the level of income is most likely staying steady. As part of planning and projecting for the future, how does that affect our housing policy? Because, I mean, if we go forward to that 525 new units at 2025, what is it, 898 by 2040, and our population continues to decline, how can we justify spending large amounts of money on housing developments when eventually those developments might not succeed?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's kind of like a chicken and the egg where, do people follow the housing or does the housing follow people? So right off the bat, in the study that I did in 2022, there are a multitude of strategies that don't involve money necessarily that can be done. And one of the big ones was a zoning code rewrite several years ago that just allows more housing options and on smaller lots and that sort of thing. So that's a good, some good progress that you guys have made. Another is the reason I had more of a regional focus on this is that there's still regional demand, and those individual population projections that just got announced are based heavily on how those municipalities grew in the past 10 to 20 years. So, for example, like Cronin, Wetter, and Weston grew quite a bit in those decades, but that doesn't necessarily mean they will continue to grow at that rate. If we're thinking like a region, adding housing anywhere helps the region as a whole, but if you have more housing in your city, you're potentially bringing in more workers where workers are needed and generating more tax revenue, especially I work in another county where they have a ton of land that's sitting there that's publicly owned and it's not generating any tax revenue, and it if it was given away for free, it could generate more revenue than it is now. So
Is that true, that there are, Chief Barnes the other day said that some of the people at the shelter have jobs, but they can't afford the housing that's available in the city of Wausau or in the metro area.
Yep.
So I think maybe we should be looking at jobs and the economy that drives jobs before maybe we look at the housing market, because the housing will come once we have the jobs. And do you see trends in more manufacturing jobs or other I don't see that within the city of Wausau. I see it in Kronewetter, Weston, of course, a lot, but when we speak to planning for the city of Wausau, what does that all mean?
Right. And yeah, definitely supporting jobs that pay a living wage is a part of the puzzle. But also the reason prices are so high is because of scarcity and those vacancy rates. So I think statewide we're down, was the last report, 140,000 units across Wisconsin. So yeah,
But those housing units are quite expensive, because when you talk to the person on the street, they really can't afford those moderate, what I would call moderate rental units. And I'm concerned about how we approach the planning, because most likely we will have requests for large amounts of housing subsidy. And how do we approach that when we really don't, and when we don't see an active trend in jobs and in wages, really?
right.
Because Marquette says Marathon's growth is whereas I don't think Marathon County is planning on growing. I think the trend was leveling off, if anything else, and I'm curious about what a strong position is, because we have to be thinking about these things as we go forward. I guess that's my major point.
Yep. And one thing to add is if you can't find a rental, it's too expensive or it's not available, there's a lot of people who currently rent or currently own who would like to buy something or buy something nicer than what they have, especially when you consider all the equity people built up in the last 5 years or so, but that next step up isn't there. So that's why it's recommended to look at all the incomes, because the existing stuff's going to be cheaper than the new stuff. So if you can get more people into the newer housing who can afford it, then it frees up more of the affordable stuff behind. So there's a lot of pieces that go into that.
Right, and just as, I know that in my district, there's a lot of empty houses, and that speaks to the housing stock. And I don't know that that becomes part of it, but I think that becomes part of a housing policy as we move forward. But thank you for your program. Thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Rick Tierney.
My district has the Green Tree Housing Project that's going in for approximately 140, 150 units. Those aren't in your numbers because it's fairly new. So that's another 140 homes. And like Alder Gisselman, I don't see any job creation in Wausau. I don't see employers coming into Wausau, large employers, manufacturing, technology. I don't see that coming into our community. I think one of the reasons is our taxes, and I think that's what's going to keep people out of Wausau and more towards Weston and Kronewetter and Rothschild, is because we have very high taxes in Wausau. So my thought is, if people are here in this community working, even if there was more job creation, they're going to live on the outskirts where the property taxes and are much cheaper. So again, with the housing in Wausau, I mean, for example, the police department. Most of the officers on the Wausau Police Department live in Kronewetter or Weston, not in Wausau. So, and again, I see I see all this housing going up, but I don't see any manufacturing or technology or anything coming in here to create those jobs that would fill those housing projects.
And we just did a regional survey, and retirements are one of the top economic development concerns, because even if a big employer doesn't come in, you have a lot of people, what was the largest generation in history up until recently is all retiring at once, essentially. So that is where a lot of it, even if there isn't a big employer coming in all the time, that's where some of the concern is how do you attract people? If someone stays here and retires and stays in their house, that house doesn't become available. Some of them might move somewhere, more retirement oriented, but some people might stay. So yeah, there's a lot of different pieces to think about, but that's one of them that we keep hearing that I figured was worth passing on.
Just one of the things I can comment on in terms of workforce and job creation, one of the biggest issues that I hear from companies in our business campuses around the city in general is workforce shortage. So one of the strategies we've adapted to try to focus on that and try to create housing units for people to live, whether it's the healthcare industry or a number of other places that they just don't have a place for people to live. So trying to bring in new jobs and everything, it's just going to really eat up at those existing businesses that have that workforce shortage. So one of the focuses that we've worked towards is creating more housing units.
Randy, I think part of that is that we are not isolated in that shortage of workers.
Yep.
I mean, not at all. Any city you go to right now, you're waiting longer for things, whether it's healthcare, going to a restaurant because they're short on servers and cooks. Wausau is just one of the communities that's having that same issue ever since COVID.
Yep.
So I think that you could say, you know, that's the same as going to Madison. There's a work shortage in favorite college town, or Green Bay. I don't think that it is just a Wausau problem.
No, absolutely not. It's not a workforce shortage issue in Wausau. It's not even a state of Wisconsin thing. It's a nationwide issue. But that's a strategy that we've been working towards, is creating housing units to try to have places for people to live. And I just wanted one other comment on the census, and Sam and I have talked about this before previously, is I really don't put a lot of weight in that 2020 census. The numbers that we've seen in terms of projections for population coming out of that shows a slight increase in the city of Wausau. I think we're over the 40,000 number in terms of population projected to grow. Small amounts over that time, but I think I'd go back to your slide that you had that talks about housing size and where that comes into play, where when I used to do subdivision review, we would project the number of people per household. And as we've been doing that over time, we've been bringing that number down and down, where it used to be around 3.5 people per household. Now we're projecting 2.5, 2.2. It's just that you don't see the large families that we used to, and that's one of the reasons why, even if the population does stay stagnant, that we're going to still see that need for more housing units, and that's what we're running into at this point.
Thank you. I also, working during the day at the school district at the secondary level, we do regularly have employers come in and meet with students, talk with students, because they are looking for workforce. So I do see it. I have seen it, especially in the last few years, a real growing need for that. So I guess with the taxes, that's true, that they're high, but also the more housing we have, that will help with the tax base too. If we have a development, then that will be more to contribute to the tax base. So that will help in that matter, I believe, that manner, I should say. Any other questions or comments? Oh, Alder Hinkie.
Yeah, just one more thing, the cost and affordability. I mean, it's probably not this simple, but I always think, I didn't take many economics classes, but there's the supply and demand. To lower cost, you either increase supply or lower demand. And so I think increasing supply is one of the easiest levers we could pull to try and help with some of those cost issues and affordability. Just that's where I think of it. Thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you, Stan, for your presentation. We certainly appreciate
Thank you.
it.
Let me know if you ever have any questions. Feel free to email me or call me.
Thank you. Just go back. Okay, so then moving on to agenda item number 4, then discussion on housing, including existing stock, current and future projects.
Yeah, and at this time, I'm going to introduce Carrie Edmondson. Carrie's our new assistant planner with the city. She'll be walking us through just a presentation that's been put together on housing updates. So take it away, Carrie.
All right, thanks. Thank you, Chair Lukens and members of the Economic Development Committee. This is a good exercise for me to introduce myself, but also it was a good exercise for me to kind of go through some of the recent projects and just make sure I'm up to speed with what has been going on in the city of Wausau with regard to housing. Just to pan out a little bit from the outset. So, and I know many of you are very familiar with this, but the way we've thought about housing in the last 10 years has really changed markedly. The state in 2018 required cities to do a housing affordability analysis if they're over a certain population and look at, permit fees and things like that and ways that we can make housing more likely to happen in our communities as a municipality. And around that same time, Kurt Paulson issued a study about the need for workforce housing, to Alder Gisselman's point about how some of the missing middle options that were very common like 100 years ago, to have like 4 units in a home or to have different styles and types that are affordable, to make sure cities are zoning for that. And like Sam said, we do have a very updated zoning code that does have allowances for different styles and types, which is definitely a positive. So next slide. So in this presentation, we'll look a little bit at plans and framework, existing conditions, current projects, and then moving forward. And then I'm just anxious to hear your thoughts on, what you'd like to see more of, what you think is working well, and what you think we could look at, ways of doing better in terms of our housing policy framework and just planning moving forward. So next slide, plans and framework. So we do have a comp plan that was done in 2017. Of course, we're required every 10 years to do an update. So we're coming close to that update. So that's something that we'll be thinking about soon. And the housing chapter is one of the required elements of that comp plan. We have a very new zoning code 2020. A lot of great changes were incorporated there. I think it was already had a lot of good things, and we were able to update that. In 2022, Sam was the lead on a regional metropolitan area housing assessment where he looked at things regionally and did a full analysis there, and then he just gave us some updates on the projections. In terms of City of Wausau programs, so we have a very effective homeowner and rental rehab programs to keep our older housing stock up to date and provide resources to our community members, which is very important. And we also offer down payment assistance funds. So we have means to bring people into homes and also to keep those homes up to date. And then in terms of a committee, we do have an affordable housing regional task force. And I believe that was one of the recommendations that came out of that 2022 metropolitan area housing assessment. So we did take some of those components and are really trying to put those to work also. Then next slide. So this is just our comp plan. So just a quick, the city of Wausau will continue to offer equal access to quality, affordable housing is one of our goals in that chapter. And then objectives under that, maintain and improve the existing housing stock by supporting and encouraging both public and private rehabilitation efforts, which, like I said, we have programs in the city that help us do that help residents do that. And then also to promote programs and policies that provide housing opportunities for all residents. So just looking at ways to prioritize all residents and make sure there are housing options that work for everyone is a goal, an objective that we try to work toward. Encourage a variety of housing types throughout the city without concentrating any particular type of housing within one neighborhood. So variety of housing and styles is kind of reiterated throughout that chapter. And then this is just hitting on the metro housing assessment that Sam led with regional planning. So that was just a few years ago, 2022. Overarching throughout that document and the recommendations is basically just more housing. Recommended that all 8 municipalities actively pursue new construction of housing of all types and prices while encouraging the preservation of existing housing. So they work hand in hand to preserve what we have and create new. And then it also encouraged preservation of existing housing to maintain a steady supply of affordable housing in good condition long term. And this is existing conditions. So we have, in 2020, that was 2020 population of a little under 40,000. The number of 2020 households was a little over 17. And then in that metro housing study, they projected that by 2025, we wanted 525 units, 293 by 2030, and then 898 by 2040. So looking at our current projects, so this is what we've been doing in the last few years. So some of our recent economic development efforts have prioritized housing per all that various planning guidance. So some of the projects, mall redevelopment, riverfront redevelopment, and then of course infill housing continues to be a priority and something that we want to see. So recently constructed projects, River Life Apartments, Mountain Lanes Apartments, and then Banter Wausau. And then projects in planning or under construction are the Foundry on Third, West Side Commons, Vanguard Project, 700 Grand, Colby Apartments, and Green Tree Meadows subdivision. And one thing I think is really positive within this is it's kind of a mix of styles. We have some single family, we have some apartments. The Colby project is really interesting. I mean, that's a private project. We're not necessarily involved with that, but it's interesting to see an employer kind of take that on and know that they want to have, nearby housing. So, I mean, I think there is a lot of different aspects going on, and a lot of the documents that are coming out saying that's kind of the road to success, is to incorporate a lot of different ways of doing housing. So the Foundry on Third, mixed-use development, 153 residential market rate units with street-level retail and commercial, and this is under construction now. And West Side Commons is residential, 54 income qualified housing units, and it utilizes low-income housing tax credit program, and that's also under construction now. And then Vanguard, the SIP just went to Planning Commission, 144 market rate units, proposed groundbreaking in fall of 2025. This, I'm not sure if this is exactly still, and then completion in 2027. And then the 700 Grand Apartments, 50 income qualified housing units, again using LIHTC, and then groundbreaking 2025, completion by the end of 2026. And the Colby Apartments, so this isn't something that the city was a partner, is my understanding, but this is a model that's recommended a lot, is for an employer, whether it be out in the more rural counties, to have maybe an agricultural employer or a manufacturing employer. If they're understanding part of their talent attraction is the lack of affordable nearby housing, and this is a really good example because the transportation factor is kind of removed also because it's adjacent property or near adjacent. So this is one, and I believe this isn't only for their employees, but the fact that they're taking it on, I think, would tell us that there is a need, that they're recognizing that as a need. So 102 cost-effective housing units, Colby and Colby led, and then that groundbreaking is upcoming with the completion of 2026. And then, as Ms. Tierney said, Green Tree Meadow subdivision, that is in the planning stages right now, I believe. 149 single-family home lots, and that would be a phased development. Oh, it has. Oh, thank you. Okay, I knew there were going to be some things in here that okay, thanks. Okay, so this is moving forward. So we had those numbers, 2025, 2030, 2040. So this is where we're at. If we total those units and look by 2025, we would have 435, and then by 2030, we'd be at 880. So I think we're tracking, we're corresponding to what the recommendation in that Metro Housing Assessment said. And I mean, I think as the committee members stated, I mean, I think it's a positive, that we responded to the call. We're trying to, make sure we're in line with the recommendations and make sure that residents have a variety of styles and options available. And so this is moving forward. So overarching goals or objectives would be to continue to add housing, and back per that planning guidance, we want a variety of styles and types. We want a variety of options citywide, and to continue to encourage, assist with, and promote rehabilitation efforts when and where possible. It's important to preserve our existing stock. We have very strong historic preservation in this community, and prioritizing that, creating awareness and education. People have more pride in their properties. They want to maintain older properties. They recognize the value of that. And we also then oftentimes will retain stock that is good for entry-level homeowners as well. And then that we just want to continue to make Wausau a place where people want to live, work, and play. We want those things working in concert. We want the employment. We want the large employers. We want the housing. And we just want visitors. I mean, we just want people to spend time here, recognize that it's a great place to be, and hopefully, somewhere that they do want to live. And then I'm interested just to hear questions, comments, and feedback from the committee on their thoughts and just directions they think would be beneficial to head, or any ideas they may have. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, committee members. Questions, comments, suggestions?
Most of my suggestions were when the other gentleman did his presentation regarding we've got to have jobs to fill this housing. I think it was that we needed 500 more places at one time, and we're up over 800. So I think we're in a good place there. We need to create jobs with livable wages. Somehow get those in here.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean,
Others, Elder Killian.
I have just one question. Does the development of a lot of market rate apartments, I was a past rental owner, and what I've noticed in the last few years is that the development of large amounts of market rate apartments has stimulated private landlords to drastically elevate the cost of their rentals. So the more market rate apartments that there are, it feels like the private landlords are really almost doubling some of the rental amounts that they're asking. Have you noticed that that's kind of a trend in Wausau?
I don't know that we have good data on that, but I mean, this is my own lack of, but I would think back to the supply conversation. I mean, I would think the more options are available, it'd be hard for people to do that, but it doesn't mean it's not happening, because as Sam described, I mean, if our vacancy rates are really low, it could be that they're charging, way more than they should be, and they're getting it just because we don't have as many options.
It seems to me that, and just having sold some rental properties, it seems to me, I watched the rental amounts actually double on the ones that I sold. And when I ask about it, it's because they say that the market rate is so substantial. And I think that is what Alder Gisselman was saying, is that even though it's a market rate, people are saying they can't afford it. But it feels as though having so many market rate apartments has stimulated the private landlord to increase the amount of monthly rate they're asking. And I just wondered if there was you can maybe keep an eye on that and notice if there's a trend like that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I mean, I think the more accurate data we have in terms of rentals, vacancies, et cetera, it's easier for us to see the result of what's happening, as a result of development, and just generally, I guess, what's going on with the market. Yeah.
Mr. Pfeiffer.
Yeah. To Alder Killian's point, I don't know that I would necessarily correlate the rise in private, homes and the rental prices associated with that with the influx or the new market rate apartments coming on, but just an overall, if you look at the housing market and the price for what a new single-family home costs, or I shouldn't say new, but if you're going on the market and you're trying to buy an existing single-family home, just the overall cost of housing has gone up so tremendously in the last 5 to 10 years. I think that's just another symptom of that, where it's harder to buy a home. You're going to be able to charge more for rent. So I think there's it's just a symptom of the housing market as a whole. I would think from the standpoint of new units coming on the market, that from a supply and demand effect, they aren't going to be able to rent them if there isn't the demand for them. So it's just a matter if there's more units available, then hopefully the market would level itself off a little bit over time. But that's interesting and something that we can pay attention to for sure.
Thank you. Others? Alder Hinkie.
Yeah, thanks. I've heard a lot about job creation now, and I guess I would really be cautious there. If you bring in a bunch of jobs and we focus on jobs, that's just going to increase demand, which is, again, it's not this simple, but economics 101, that's just going to increase your pricing. Also, as a working for a major employer in the area, we can't, that pays a really good wage. We can't find people. We need people. Another point to that would be Colby needs to find, Colby and Colby, again, paying really good wages, can't find people. They're needing to build housing just to try and get people here. So, I mean, I see it as we need to be really cautious if we start trying to go out and recruit a bunch of jobs to come to this area. It can have the opposite effect, I think. So that's kind of my thoughts right now. Thanks.
Thank you. Do you mean recruiting people for jobs without having housing?
Just going out and trying to find major corporate companies to move into the area to supply us with a lot more jobs and increase demand on the housing market. And we struggle finding people. The last people we've hired have moved from Texas and the Green Bay area. So, I mean, that's how far we're reaching to find qualified people. Thank you.
Thank you. Other question? Alder Gisselman.
Thank you. If Wausau wants to change, if Wausau indeed wants to change that decrease in that trend in population, then we have to do something with regard to housing, with regard to employment. So then why don't people want to come to Wausau or Marathon County? I mean, if there are open jobs somewhere, what is it? I mean, why doesn't people in Madison or Milwaukee or Minneapolis? But we know that it's the other way around. People want to go to Minneapolis, Madison, and other places. So how is Wausau going to change that? So, I mean, is it the employment? Is it the wages we pay? Granted, they may be very substantial, but I think our income levels are below the income levels of, for instance, of the state of Wisconsin. So I guess that's your office do we just get more land to buy more, to get more housing, or what? I think the city council and the city has to start asking those questions, because I for one don't want to see Wausau decline. I mean, we've been steady now for 39,000 for how many decades? 2 at least. But is this trend going to continue? So what are we really going to do to change that? I don't want Wausau to start to, everybody leaves and school enrollment is down. All the trends are down. So how are we going to approach this? I don't know, but at least we should be, as we speak, we should be looking at those questions and trying to solve some kind of those. I'm sure the scholarship and the trends and all that are out there today can speak to that. But that's just my concern. Thank you.
I think that's a really good point. And I think central Wisconsin and northern Wisconsin struggle with that. They really do. They struggle with the young kids graduating and leaving. And unless they're from here, a lot of times they're, to a big city and that's where they want to be. And I think it's like all of the above. I mean, I think if we're looking at housing, employment, and then placemaking, which I think Wausau's done a lot of really good things with, which would be like bike ped, public art, park spaces, third spaces, people like the 400 block where people like to congregate, outdoor rec. I mean, the young younger people want amenities, they want to do things, they want activities. And I think if we are holding steady, I mean, I think we honestly, we're doing a lot of things right, because it's very, very difficult to keep that group here. I mean, they do want to go to bigger cities, and it's very, very common. I mean, I think there's very few cities like central and north that are growing, because of the demographics of the population and just where the kids want to go. So, I mean, I think it's a great point, and I think we have to look at all of it.
I think one of the biggest things that you brought up is placemaking, even though it's a buzzword. I think it does fit well in this conversation and what we need to do in Wausau to continue to grow our population, to stay a vibrant city. The things that we're doing on the riverfront with the redevelopment of the River Life area, what we're doing with the mall area, creating new spaces that have that hip, cool factor that people want to live in and they want to utilize and enjoy. The job market has changed drastically from my parents' time to my time, in that it wasn't anything odd to move multiple states over for a job. Now, if somebody decides that they want to live in Wausau and they're in a manufacturing setting, they have the opportunity to choose their company in a lot of sense. There's a lot of jobs available, and folks that want to move to an area that have a skill set, especially something like manufacturing, they're going to be able to find that job where they want it in most cases. That's where we need to focus on creating a place where people want to live, whether it's focusing on our outdoor recreation, arts, music, whatever. We're lucky that we have schools. That's another thing that I think often comes up when we have these conversations. A lot of people are eager to move to a bigger city when they're fresh out of college to enjoy that life. But also in central Wisconsin, we have the advantage of having good schools and a good pace of life, good safety. So I think there's advantages to that, and making sure that we're taking advantage of where we fit and where we can benefit others.
I would agree with that. Again, working with young people, and I have for years, things are a lot different than when I was that age. And so when I first served on economic development, like it really, and finance committees, I was like, oh my God, the money, it's so different than my own budget and what I'm used to being very frugal. But I think it's also a change in thinking, because yes, like the Riverwalk, like that, young people value those experiences. A lot of young people want to spend, their money more. It's not so much on their homes and things in their homes, always it's experiences. And so although it costs, we have to, if we want to attract that, we're going to have to spend some money. And I know that's really hard, because we want to try to be fiscally, frugal, but it's I think that's one takeaway that has really been a learning experience for me, because I listen to all sorts of city planners from different areas and all the time, and read about it, and that's what I'm seeing too. So to develop some of those, if we want that, because I too want Wausau to thrive, but we're going to have to be willing to spend money on some things to do that, and that's a struggle, I think, so there's no easy answers, yeah. At least that's from my viewpoint, what I've seen. Alder Killian.
I think you hit on a really important aspect of the city of Wausau. We have educational systems. We have advanced placement at Wausau West. We have the International Baccalaureate program at Wausau East. These are young, outstanding, bright people, and it feels as though the city of Wausau, instead of just working on bringing people in, they should be looking at programs that could maintain the wonderful people that we have. And yes, young people like to travel and expand their lives, but you know, it was brought up to me probably about a year ago that maybe there could be some city program involved with kids who are in these advanced placement programs and IB programs to aid them with scholarships, and then they would have some sort of an agreement that, yes, once we're done with our education, we could come back here and work professionally in Wausau. It feels like retaining our talent should be an important aspect and not just bringing people in from the outside.
That's true.
Alder Tierney. Thank you, Alder Kelly.
One of the questions I have is, Randy was talking about a lot of the positives that Wausau offers. Why are we not marketing that to other communities to try to bring those people into Wausau, or try to keep our talent here? I think that might be something that we could do and show the recreational things we have, like the Whitewater Park, the River Trail, Granite Peak, 9 Mile. And because people outside this community don't know about those options that they would have if they were here.
And I would argue that there's people within the community that don't know of them or don't take advantage of the assets that we do have in our own community. Visit Wausau has been putting in some effort, social media and different things to try to capitalize on that. The city has utilized the Wausau brand in different ways, and one of the intentions of the previous effort with Community Foundation was to try to show off the assets and resources that we have. So that's one of the things that we're going to be looking at to see what we can utilize with that Wausau brand to revitalize that, to hit on a lot of the things that are being discussed between alders here. So absolutely.
Thank you. Yes, I have a Wausau shirt, and I would love to get some more things like that. So, yeah, some more bling. So, okay, I don't know if there's another meeting after this at 6:30, and we do have one other thing on the agenda. Does anyone have any other comments or questions on this?
Thank you.
Lots of great ideas, yeah, thank you. So, agenda item number 5 has been pulled for now because,
Just a timing issue on that. We'll likely see it next month as far as getting those deed restrictions updated, so.
thank you. So then we are on to agenda item number 6, discussion and possible action approving quitclaim deed, Beacon Resources LLC, 731 North 3rd Street.
Yeah, this is just a little bit of a cleanup on some language from on a deed from the 60s. So the Grable, what's known as the Grable Building, or 731 North, from 731 North 3rd Street, what's known as the Grable Building, that was purchased recently by Beacon Resources. They're looking to have a future development on there, and as they're kind of going through the paperwork, doing their due diligence, they noticed that there's a section of what used to be 2nd Street, and there's a map in your packet that highlights the, it has an image from, I think, 1958, and it kind of highlights that section of the street that we're talking about. There you go. The building currently sits on top of that. And so just in their due diligence, there's a clause in the, when the city deeded that to the, what was Prangy's department store at the time, it said for the exclusive use of a development of a department store. Obviously, that's not been a department store for many, many years. And this is just a little bit that we want to clean up and through the action of a quick claim. So I guess if there's any more like particular legal questions on that, perhaps Attorney Jacobson could answer them. But do you have a question, Alder? Oh, good.
It's not a legal question, Andrew. Since we're looking at, and I understand the need to clean up the deed, but since we're looking at a very large, important site in our downtown, do we know if there's a proposed project for that? It feels like we're quit claiming a deed to somebody and we have no idea what for.
Well, I've only heard rumors at this point, so I don't have anything.
So there's no idea what kind of project will go there?
some kind of development, but, at this point, it's all a private concern. There's no public involvement with it at this point.
And I understand that, but it seems as though if we're going to be quit claiming a property like that to someone, we should have some idea
I mean,
what
we-
it's
we
going
don't-
to be, but doesn't,
We don't own the property currently. We're just, again, it's,
we own the, okay, so why are we quit claiming the deed if we don't have any legal involvement? I guess
and
that's the
there's your
question.
legal question.
I guess that's the question.
Thank you. We're not quit claiming ownership per se. We're quit claiming any remaining interest we may have or rights to the restriction that the property only be used to develop a retail department store. And that's typically how you would extinguish that kind of restriction, much like we have deed restrictions in the business campus. So we don't own the property, but when they did a title check, they found that this old reserved easement, or not even an easement, like a restriction, when we sold the property to Prangy, that said that it can only ever be used for a retail department store. And the current private owners saw that and said, yeah, we want that restriction removed, so just quit claim whatever interest you have in that right to enforce that to us, and it will get rid of it. Does that make more sense?
Well, it does make sense,
Okay.
but it just felt like we should know what's going there.
Well, that's a good question, and I don't have any information on that, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Andrew,
Attorney,
I have a question.
Yes.
Well, this company that bought it is Chuckadorsey's. And I also saw a letter to Chuckadorsey from the DNR talking about the contamination on the site, et cetera. So I'm weary of that based on the Foundry on Third. I'm weary about Mr. Godorsey coming in and the city folding to his wants. So that's just my 2 cents.
Okay.
but because the city doesn't own it,
No, I'm concerned about some of the other things that the city might be expected to do based on the Foundry on Third when that was done. 'Cause
Those would be separate actions further down the road
I'm
if they
just
come to
saying
it, so,
that I'll be watching this carefully.
okay.
any other questions or comments? Okay. Oh,
Just,
Oh,
just,
Alder Hinkie,
just a
sorry.
comment. If we're so concerned about what might be going on here, maybe the city should be buying more property so that we control it a little bit better. I mean, if we're really concerned about what private companies are going to be doing in the major downtown areas, a good way to have some say in that would be to own the property. So I'm hearing a lot of contradictory comments here that make me really confused from, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not against developing downtown, not at all. I am concerned about what would go down there, and I'm concerned to some degree about the developer.
Again, any other issues that are brought forth will be separate actions in the future and don't necessarily concern this at this point, so. I just don't have any other further information on that, so.
Alder Gisselman?
I just make the motion to approve as stated in the agenda, approving the quitclaim deed for Beacon Resources LLC at 731 North 3rd Street.
Thank you. So motion by Alder Gisselman, is there a second?
I'll second.
Alder Hinkie, second by Alder Hinkie, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, then that motion passes, all in agreement. And lastly, then, looking for a motion to adjourn. Okay, motion by Alder Tierney, second by Alder Hinkie. All in favor?
Aye.
Everyone is, and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.